Fagan, Chris. How you going?
I'm going well. I'm really busy, to be honest. When you got 47 players spread out across the country and all of your staff at home as well, my commitment to our group was to stay connected and keep chatting to them. And it seems by the time you do that and you have a few meetings with the key people at our own club, sort of talking about the future and planning about what may or may not happen, the week seems to go pretty quickly for me, which is fortunate. I just sort of made a decision myself that I was just going to set some goals each night about what I would do the next day, what I'd try and achieve, what my routine would be, and I'm finding that one day at a time approach is working pretty well and focusing in on others.
What are some of the goals that you've been setting? What are some examples of goals you sort of set for yourself each day?
Oh, well, I've probably got a list of 12 players I want to call, 5 staff I want to call, make a list of those names. There's some people who I speak to regularly on a professional basis just to try and learn and improve my coaching. So I'm spending a bit more time talking to those guys as well. So, I think one of my own personal aims is to hopefully, at the end of this period, come out of it a better coach and a better person. So don't know whether I'll achieve that, but I'm going to have a crack because I'd rather do that and sit around waiting for when we're going to play footy again.
What do you make of the Hub suggestion and the idea that teams might go to other states and play round robins and leave Tassie having a low corona count may come out of this budget earlier? Do you think it's viable, or do you think it's just an idea that's been thrown out?
Oh, look, I think lots of ideas have been thrown around about what the competition might look like when we get back up and going again, and I think we're going to need to be pretty flexible because we don't know when that's going to be and how much time we'll have to play a season. So I think all things should be put on the table. I'm not in a position where like the AFL have been so far to consider all these options, but I've got no doubt at some point in time they'll talk to us coaches about some of their ideas, because I know that we're all pretty keen as a coaching group to be part of the solution going forward and to help the game get back on its feet and grow and thrive again. So no idea is a silly idea at the moment. Everything needs to be considered, and obviously we'll all get a chance to have a talk about it at some point in time. But right now, not fully informed on everything, so wouldn't like to comment specifically on that.
What kind of feedback have you been getting as a coach, just as a footy person, as you've gone around from punters about no AFL footy right now?
About the fact that there's no football? Did you say, James? Look, I haven't run into too many people. The only people I'm talking to are the players and the coaches. I know the players. The players feel like they've just put in all this training over the pre-season. They're ready to go, and the season was up and about to start, and then suddenly the rug's been pulled. So they're disappointed that a lot of the hard work that they've put in is now on hold, and they're trying to get their heads around the idea that what they're basically doing now is going back into a pre-season phase where they're trying to keep fit, albeit they can't train as a group. They're trying to do that on an individual basis, and that's challenging. But by and large, they're a little bit the same as me. They've developed a good daily routine for their training, and a lot of them are taking the opportunity to do a bit of extra study as well. And to look after their diets and whatnot. So they're gradually adapting, but very much missing football. I know our coaches are very much the same. We're all creatures of routine and habit, and those normal things that are happening at this time of year aren't. So we're all missing that a little bit. In terms of the fans, I think everybody looks forward to the footy season. It's one of Australia's great winter pastimes, and everyone's had that sense of enthusiasm about the season about to start, and now it's not there. So everyone's a little bit frustrated, I think, but everyone's sort of understanding of the situation, and then hopefully realise that the more we do what we're told in these times, hopefully the sooner life gets back to normal. So that's the key focus at the moment.
In terms of the guys and their training, do you have any kind of do you have going among the players in terms of training and their output?
Yeah, you should be a coach, James. We're only having a chat as a coaching group yesterday about, the boys have got their programs and they're doing them, but how can we add some challenge and some variety so that they remain motivated during this period of time? Because the hard thing is not knowing where the end point is. Normally when you do a pre-season, you know that the games are going to start at a certain time. Right now we don't know when it's going to start. So we've got a coaches meeting on Friday and a leaders meeting on Monday, and the topic for conversation will be how can we keep training interesting, challenging, etc. over this period of time. So we'll explore a few ideas and hopefully come up with some, but there are challenges because the boys are all over the country. We've got some in Perth, some in Melbourne, quite a few up here. I think 31 of our players are still in Brisbane. The other 16 have gone elsewhere. So coordinating all that's a bit of a challenge, but I'm sure we can find some inventive ways to get the boys to compete even though they're not being able to train with each other.
Being out of their routine, training together like you've said and playing, not playing for so long, what can we expect from AFL players and AFL games in general when they run out to play that first game?
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Like, our guys are preparing as if they would be, going to start round one. So hopefully you'll see a fit-looking group of players who can go out and play with a decent level of intensity for about 100 minutes. I think when we come back, the games round one was shorter, so the games will definitely be shorter. But I would hope that the players come back in exactly the same condition as they returned at the end of pre-season last year, and that's what they're all aiming for at the moment. And I imagine that's the same at every club. I think we'll then have a 3 or 4 week period. I think the AFL set a 3-week period to prepare, which isn't very long as a group, but that's why you need the guys to be doing some good work now so that they can pretty quickly get back into some sort of match practice, which is the thing you can't do when you're all separated, and get cracking again. It might be that's hard when you've only got a 3-week prep and maybe teams are going to tire a little bit late in games and all that sort of stuff. It's hard to predict, and we never had enough of a sample, just one round, to find out what the trends would be across the competition with the shorter game.
So you'd advocate or be keen for the shorter quarters and bigger benches?
I think we'll probably have to do that because I imagine that we'll be playing games much closer together, so we might be in situations where we've only got 4 and 5 days between games. So I think an extended bench would definitely be handy because you're going to have to be really smart in the way that you manage the loads of your players. And if that is the way it goes when we get back, it's going to be a challenge for all of us because we've never had to do that before. The sports scientists will be flat out trying to work out ways that we can recover and come up and play well again. But on the other side of that, I know players that are pretty excited about the fact that they will be playing games closer together, because I think a lot of them enjoy playing the games more than they do the training. So, there'll be benefits to it, I'm sure. We just don't know what they'll be, and we'll be doing a lot of learning, I reckon, in the first few weeks when we come back.
Chris, there's been a few clubs that have raised how they don't want to burn their players out during this period because there could be a really close turnaround from the end of 2020 to the start of 21. Do you have to be conscious about that and giving the players a bit of a breather in this quarantine period?
Yeah, we will. The difficulty is knowing how long it's going to go on for, because right now, the AFL have said the end of the month they'll have a look at it. Hopefully they might return on May the 31st. So you've always got to have your players pretty much ready to go on 4 weeks training. So it's a little bit hard to know when to back off. I think what the players are getting now is a mental break from the club, so that should freshen them up anyway and make them look forward to the day that they return. But it is an interesting question, how you actually manage their loads so that they're sort of at their peak to play the season and can sort of get through it. Well, we've been talking to our sports science conditioning guys about that a fair bit, and it's one of those things I think we're just going to have to think on our feet with a little bit as this stretches out.
I think David notable with players going and taking on some part-time work, and you touched on study there. Are you aware of any players who have taken on any jobs away from footy at the moment?
We've got a couple of players I know who are trying to get jobs. I think Jackson Pryor, he went home to Perth and he used to have a part-time job at Bunnings. I think he's picked up a bit more part-time work at Bunnings while he's back in Perth. So we're encouraging our players to do that if it helps them get through, and it's really good for their overall holistic development, I reckon, to just go out and get in the workforce and find out what that's like. That should make them better balanced and better rounded people. So we've certainly got a few that are considering that. A couple of other boys in Melbourne, I think, are looking for jobs at supermarkets and things like that. So good on them.
With how young your group is, Chris, are you worried with the stripping of footy department spending, that the welfare and the development and resources around players may not be up to speed into 2021 as what it could have been?
Yeah, well, I think we're all going to be challenged financially. I mean, the AFL haven't said how much the football department spending is going to be cut, but we know it's going to be cut, and for good reason, because we need the game to survive then thrive again, so we understand all that. And it's something we can't really fight all that hard against, I don't think, so we're just going to have to work out ways to be smart with what we do. And look, there's no doubt that having a bigger football department allows you to look after each player better on an individual basis. I mean, coach to player ratio, it's just simple mathematics, but we're just going to have to work out ways and means where we can do all the things that we've been doing with less people in a pretty smart way. So we'll see how all that goes. Obviously, a lot of having thoughts about that at the moment, but I don't envy the AFL's task trying to work out the best way forward financially for the competition. So we have to be flexible and think in creative ways to maintain the integrity of the product, which is AFL footy, and look after our players as best we can.
And just in terms of the players who are interstate, you mentioned the 16 guys that are elsewhere, and Queensland's laws are pretty strict. They'll have to self-isolate for 14 days once they return. Are you conscious of that, and do you think there might be a bit of a push for the players to get back to Queensland a little bit earlier so they can self-isolate at home rather than that 2 weeks when they may have to be training to prepare for the first game?
Yeah, it is something that we're considering. It'd be nice if you knew when the start date was going to be. You could plan a little bit more effectively around it. But I know, just chatting to the guys that aren't in Brisbane at the moment, they're all starting to consider that now, based on their own individual circumstances. You're right, it's probably better to do it sooner rather than later. And it probably is a little easier for them if they were all up here, because they can still train in pairs and do things like that as long as they practice the proper social distancing protocols. So yeah, a lot of those guys are considering that at the moment, but it's individual by individual. Couple of the boys that have gone back to their home states are coping really well. They've got great training setups and they're fine. Others are feeling a little bit disconnected, which is natural enough.
Just the last one from me. You spoke about the coach and you're driving the Friday meeting, and I'm sure David Noble's in touch with everyone. But of the players, who do you see amongst the group driving the connection? Is there anyone that sort of jumped up and is leading the way in keeping the group as one? Yeah,
it probably hasn't been any one player. I think there's a little bit of laughter earlier on when we announced a leadership group of 9 people, but right now having 9 leaders is a pretty good thing when you split up all over the place, and the leadership group's purpose at the moment is pretty much just keeping the playing group connected and communicating with each other, and they're going out of their way particularly to talk to the lads that have headed off back to their home states for this period of time, and they're doing a terrific job. And we have a catch up every Monday for about an hour, and they report in on how people are going, because that's one of the great unknowns in this period. We don't actually know how people are going to cope with what's going on, and it's going to be different for different people. So keeping close tabs on everybody so that we can help if help is required is a really important part of what our leadership group's doing, and they're doing a great job at the moment. We're having a bit of fun too on our WhatsApp with there's a bit of a video competition going on at the moment, video of the day, where someone has to give a bit of a message, and there's a lot of humour and fun going on with that. So we're seeing other sides to people that we haven't seen before, and I'm sure our club's video collection at the end of this period would be well worth a watch, the compilation. I'm looking forward to that.
Hey Chris, Ashley here. Just wondering, you've had a little bit of time now away from the players. Do you feel like you're getting the right balance as a coach when it comes to contact with them?
Yeah, look, probably if we're guilty of anything at the Lions, we've probably gone overboard with it and probably have needed to pull it back a little bit, but I reckon that's a better problem to have than not having talked to your players enough. Particularly if there's more than just me giving them a call. So like our fitness guy might be calling, our welfare guy might be calling, so too might be our physiotherapist, for instance. So we've worked out a pretty good roster now, I think, where we've got a decent balance. But again, that was one of those little challenges, trying to get the level right. And again, it's different for different players. Some guys like to talk a lot. Some guys are pretty happy looking after themselves and don't need too much guidance. And you just got to work all that out as you go through.
And I know you'll be dictated to by the AFL, but I just want to touch back on these quarantine isolation hub that's been talking about recently. Do you have a gut feeling on it? Because I know Paddy Dangerfield was saying that it didn't really sit well with him, where other past players are kind of chiming in saying, no, they would definitely do it. When you heard about it, did you have a gut feeling or reaction to it?
My first gut feel was for, it's okay for the boys who are single and don't have wives and children and all that sort of stuff to think about. And within your own playing group, you've got different scenarios too with your marital situations, and it's not easy for some players to spend a chunk of time away from home when they've got children to care for. So that was probably the first thought that came into my head. I can understand all the options being considered, and we need to do our level best to get out the 153 games that Gil talked about at the start of the year. But I think the decision's got to be made, one, if possible, where all those individual things are taken into consideration and families are high on that priority list.
Just a quick one from me, Chris. It's Nick Ansley, just a non-coronavirus question. I was just curious to get your thoughts on Hugh McCluggage. Obviously, bit of a breakout season last year, but what do you think Hugh needs to do to continue to elevate his game if we get back on the park this season? Yeah, well,
he just needs to continue what he did over the pre-season. He's in a short space of time, this is his fourth pre-season, he's turned into one of the most professional players that I can ever remember for a Year 4 player. He's very internally driven. He's grown his leadership skills. He's now part of our leadership group, which was one of the phases, I think, of his development. I think he told me he was about 8 or 9 kilos heavier than he was when he first turned up. He's much more able now to play inside and outside the contest. So he's worked on all the things that he needs to work on. He just needs the opportunity to put him into practice in a game situation. But I think every club would love to have 47 Hugh McCluggages. Coaching would be an absolute joy.